close your eyes for a moment and step back, not 100 years, not 1,000, but nearly a millennium. The year is around 1100. Across the wide Atlantic, cathedrals of stone are rising in Europe. Kings are plotting wars, and whispers of crusades echo from castle halls. But here, on the vast soil of North America, another kind of monument climbs toward the heavens. Earthen pyramids stretch skyward, as tall as 10-story buildings, their slopes packed with clay and stone, their summits crowned with temples of wood and fire. The Mississippi River bends nearby, its waters glistening like molten silver under the sun, carrying canoes filled with corn, fish, and copper. Drums thunder through the valleys, smoke twists upward in great spirals, and tens of thousands of people gather in a place you may never have heard of, Cahokia, the largest city of pre-Columbian North America. You see, history often blinds us with Europe's castles and crowns, but if you stood here in this very moment, the spectacle would rival any medieval court across the ocean. Imagine the clamor of marketplaces alive with traders, the smell of roasted venison drifting through the air, the sacred chants rolling from temple platforms. This was a world as medieval as any fortress in France, as sacred as any shrine in England. And yet it lies forgotten under the modern skyline of St. Louis, Missouri. But Cahokia is only the beginning. Across this continent, civilizations rose and fell, each with its own genius, its own struggles against famine, war, and nature's merciless hand. In the desert cliffs of the Southwest, the Pueblo carved entire cities into stone walls, their homes stacked like beehives at impossible heights. In the forests of the Northeast, the Iroquois Confederacy forged one of the most advanced systems of democracy the medieval world had ever seen, long before Columbus set sail. On the open plains, hunters thundered after herds of bison, their survival tied to the migration of animals and the rhythms of grasslands. And far to the north, where winter ruled without mercy, the Inuit carved a life from ice itself, building worlds where most humans could not last a single night. Tonight, you and I are going to step into these worlds. For the next hour, prepare to travel through time and across a continent that thrived with its own medieval wonders. We're not just telling history, we are unearthing the stories buried beneath our feet. Before we begin, let me ask you something. Take a moment to subscribe to this channel, Urgent Talks. Hit the like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now as you listen. Are you here with us in the still hours after midnight, when shadows fall heavy and imagination is sharpest? Or are you joining in the quiet light of morning when the day is just unfolding? Wherever and whenever you are, your presence connects to this story, and your support helps us bring these forgotten corners of history to life. So stay with us until the very end, because the deeper we go, the stranger, darker, and more astonishing this world will become. This is not just history, it's survival, power, and mystery. This is the medieval world of North America. Now, let's begin with Cahokia. The morning sun rises over the Mississippi Valley, spilling golden light across an expanse that feels both alive and eternal. The air is thick with the smell of earth, freshly turned by countless footsteps, by generations who built this city with their bare hands. You stand at the heart of Cahokia, a metropolis that once held more than 40,000 people, larger than London at the same time. Before you, a colossal mound rises, Monk's Mound. It is not made of stone like the pyramids of Egypt or the castles of Europe, but of clay, dirt, and basketfuls of soil carried tirelessly by workers, stacked layer upon layer. It towers more than 100 feet high and spreads wider than a dozen football fields. At its summit sits a grand wooden temple, its beams blackened from smoke, its doorways guarded by carved posts bearing fierce faces. Priests ascend the steep stairways each morning, their bodies painted in sacred patterns, their hair bound with feathers, their voices raised in chants to the spirits of sun and sky. All around, the city hums with life. The markets awaken as traders spread out mats of woven fiber, laying down goods from faraway lands. From the Great Lakes, copper tools glisten in the sun. From the Gulf Coast, shells carved into delicate ornaments are strung into necklaces. From distant forests, bundles of mica and obsidian reflect flashes of light. At the heart of it all lies corn, golden and abundant, carried in baskets, boiled in steaming pots, ground into meal for bread. Its smell fills the air, sweet and smoky, the true lifeblood of the people.
Children run through the streets, though streets is too simple a word. These are packed dirt paths winding among thatched houses, each home clustered around courtyards where fires crackle and elders tell stories. Women stir great clay pots, their hands steady as they grind corn on stone slabs. Men repair nets for fishing in the nearby river or sharpen bone-tipped spears. Smoke rises everywhere, curling skyward, mixing with the cries of birds and the laughter of the living. And yet there is order here. Cahokia is not simply a gathering of huts, it is a city planned with purpose. Wooden palisades encircle sacred spaces. Rows of mounds align with the path of the sun and the stars. In one great plaza, a ring of towering poles forms a kind of solar calendar, now known as Woodhenge, marking the solstices and equinoxes. Imagine standing there as the first rays of dawn strike through the gaps, lighting the faces of priests, the timing of rituals, the beat of drums rising with the heartbeat of the earth. But life in Cahokia was not only trade and ritual, it was also power, and with power came both glory and fear. At the summit of Monk's Mound, the great leader, sometimes called the Great Sun, held dominion. His word was law, his presence divine. He was no simple chief, he was seen as the axis between earth and sky, between mortals and spirits. His wealth came not from coins or gold, but from tribute, corn, shells, pelts, labor. Families bent their backs in service, carrying soil to build new mounds, offering gifts in ceremonies, pledging loyalty under threat of punishment. Ceremonies themselves were awe-inspiring, and at times terrifying. Picture a gathering at the Great Plaza, thousands packed shoulder to shoulder, the air heavy with heat, sweat, and anticipation. Drums pound, priests in feathered cloaks dance in spirals, their feet raising dust. Smoke from burning herbs stings the eyes. At the center, before the crowd, captives are brought forward. Some are sacrificed, their lives given to ensure fertility of the fields, protection from drought, success in war. Their cries mingle with the chants of the faithful. For Cahokia, blood was not cruelty, it was necessity, a bond between human life and the survival of the city.
And so the city thrived for generations. At its height, Cahokia's influence stretched far and wide. Villages across the Midwest felt its reach. Its culture spread in pottery styles, in trade goods, in rituals adopted by distant peoples. It was a center of gravity, a beacon of power, a city of earth yet alive with fire. But nothing lasts forever. Beneath the golden surface, cracks began to appear. As the city grew, so too did its hunger. Forests around Cahokia were stripped for firewood and construction, the river's resources strained under endless fishing. Cornfields stretched further and further, but the soil grew tired. And when the rains failed, when droughts swept across the land, the abundance turned into desperation. Imagine walking through the city in those years. The once bustling markets feel thinner, the baskets of corn less full. Families argue in hushed voices, their pots nearly empty. Children cry from hunger. The palisade around the central plaza grows taller, not only to protect from outside enemies, but from unrest within. For when food is scarce, power grows fragile. And then there are the floods. The Mississippi is generous, but she is also cruel. Heavy rains turn the fields into swamps, drowning the crops that survive drought. Entire neighborhoods lie underwater, huts collapsing in the mud. Disease follows: malaria, dysentery, fevers that sweep through families in days. What once was the great beating heart of a continent begins to falter. Archaeologists today find signs of sudden violence in Cahokia's final years. Bodies buried in haste, palisades rebuilt again and again. Perhaps internal strife tore the city apart. Rival factions clashing for the last scraps of power. Perhaps neighbors who once bowed to Cahokia rose in rebellion. Perhaps it was the simplest enemy of all: hunger. By the 1300s, Cahokia's plazas lay silent, its mounds abandoned to weeds and time. What was once greater than London had become a ghost. And yet, Cahokia never truly vanished. Its descendants carried stories, fragments of ritual, echoes of a time when their ancestors ruled a city of earth and sky. Today, Monk's Mound still rises from the Illinois soil, though highways and suburbs press against its edges. Most who pass by never know what lies beneath their feet. But if you stand there at sunrise, when the fog curls low across the grass, you can still feel the presence of drums, the murmur of a city that rivaled the medieval world. The Pueblo Cliff Dwellers. The Mississippi fades behind us. The green river valleys and the thunder of drums dissolve into silence as the land itself changes. Step westward now, into a realm of redstone, sharp canyons, and skies so wide they make you feel small beneath them. The air is dry, crisp, tinged with the scent of sagebrush. The sun is merciless, beating against the sand. But here, in this harsh land, another medieval wonder rises, not of earth piled into mounds, but of stone carved straight into the living cliffs. You are standing before Mesa Verde in what is today Colorado. Towering canyon walls enclose you, their faces scarred and pitted by centuries of wind and rain. And tucked within these cliffs, under vast natural overhangs, entire cities cling to the rock face. Multi-storied stone dwellings line the ledges, their walls stacked with skill, their rooms no larger than the reach of a man's arms, their ladders climbing like veins up into hidden chambers. This is the world of the ancestral Puebloans, a people who defied the desert by turning stone itself into shelter.
From a distance, these dwellings look like shadows, dark shapes under the cliffs. But step closer, and life reveals itself. Fires flicker in kivas, circular ceremonial chambers dug into the earth, their roofs supported by timber beams, their entrances through ladders descending like gateways into the underworld. The smell of wood smoke drifts up. You hear the voices of women grinding maize on stone metates, their rhythm steady, patient, eternal. Children laugh as they chase each other across narrow terraces, their bare feet slapping the stone. Men climb ladders with baskets on their backs, filled with squash, beans, or firewood, collected from the sparse forests above the canyon. It is a hard life, but not a bleak one. These cliff dwellers are builders, artists, survivors. Their pottery is painted with black and white designs, spirals, feathers, geometric lines that mirror the balance they see in the world around them. Their homes, carefully plastered and smoothed, rise 3 or 4 stories high, linked with doorways so small you must crouch to enter. A reminder that every bit of heat, every breath of warmth is precious here. Yet the cliffs are not just shelter, they are fortress. Look at the way the dwellings are tucked under overhangs, impossible to attack from above, hidden from sight below. In an age when raiding parties might strike without warning, the cliffs gave protection as much as shade. And in those kivas, when the fires burn low and chants rise in the smoke, the people call upon spirits of earth, sky, and ancestors. They pray for rain most of all, for in this desert, rain is the single gift that decides life or death. Corn is once again the heart of survival, but here, coaxing it from the soil is an act of faith. Fields lie on mesa tops, fragile patches of green carved into the brown. When the rains come, the crops swell. When the clouds pass by, families tighten their belts, grinding the last of the kernels stored in clay jars. Every drop matters. Every drought cuts deeper. Still, life here continues for centuries. Communities grow, spread, connect with distant peoples. From as far away as Mexico, turquoise and parrots are traded northward, their colors dazzling against the desert backdrop. From other pueblos, cotton, shells, and stories travel. The cliff dwellers are not isolated. They are part of a vast web of trade and knowledge stretching across the continent. But just as with Cahokia, time holds a shadow. By the late 1200s, the rains begin to fail more often. The desert grows harsher, crops wither. The sun burns relentless in cloudless skies. Imagine the silence of a field where corn should grow tall, but instead, only brittle stalks crumble to dust. Families grow thinner, their eyes sunken from hunger. Fires burn less often, smoke rising only weakly from the kivas. Tension builds. Scarcity brings conflict. Evidence suggests that raids grew more frequent, violence tearing through the fragile balance of life. Neighbors once bound by trade may have turned desperate, fighting for dwindling resources. At night, the cliffs echo not with laughter, but with shouts, with the clash of weapons, with cries of the wounded. And then, abandonment. One by one, these cliff cities are left behind. Rooms once filled with warmth and fire fall silent. Ladders are pulled up, doors sealed. Pots, half finished, lie scattered as if their makers meant to return, but never did. By the end of the 1200s, the great cliff dwellings stand empty, shadows clinging to stone walls, the voices of their builders carried only in the wind.
Why did they leave? Theories abound. Drought, war, spiritual change, the pull of new lands further south. Perhaps all of these together. But what matters most is that the story did not end here.
The descendants of these cliff dwellers live on today as the Hopi, the Zuni, and other Pueblo peoples, their traditions still alive, their songs and ceremonies echoing across the desert. To them, Mesa Verde is not ruin, it is memory. It is proof of resilience. It is the bones of their ancestors carved into stone. Stand in one of those empty rooms for a moment. The walls are cool beneath your fingers, the plaster still holding faint marks of hands that shaped it centuries ago. Outside, the desert sun blazes, but in here, it is shadow, stillness. If you listen closely, you might hear it. The whisper of grinding stones, the murmur of chants, the call for rain carried upward into the sky.
But it is not just family that rules this world. Look closer. The heart of Iroquois society is the clan mother. Women hold power in ways unseen in much of the medieval world. They own the fields where corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, grow. They decide who leads, for it is they who appoint the chiefs, and they who can strip them of their authority. Their wisdom guides the councils. Their voices echo in decisions of war and peace. Imagine a council fire burning bright, warriors speaking boldly, and then the voice of a clan mother rising steady and firm, her word final. The political vision of the Iroquois is no less extraordinary. 5 nations, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca, once clashed in endless war, their hatreds poisoning the forests with blood. But then came a man known as the Peacemaker, and with him Hiawatha, his voice as persuasive as thunder rolling through the trees. Together they forged the great law of peace, uniting the nations into a confederacy bound not by conquest but by agreement. Picture the ceremony, arrows bound together so that no single shaft could be broken, symbolizing unity. The council fire lit at Onondaga, the central flame of their government, where representatives gathered to debate, to argue, to persuade, but always to resolve under law. This system, born in a medieval forest, was far ahead of its time. Decisions required consensus, voices were heard, balance was sought. Even centuries later, when European colonists arrived, they marveled at the sophistication of the Confederacy, some even drawing inspiration from it in shaping their own ideas of governance.
The Pueblo cliff dwellers. The Mississippi fades behind us. The green river valleys and the thunder of drums dissolve into silence as the land itself changes. Step westward now into a realm of red stone, sharp canyons, and skies so wide they make you feel small beneath them. The air is dry, crisp, tinged with the scent of sagebrush. The sun is merciless, beating against the sand. But here, in this harsh land, another medieval wonder rises, not of earth piled into mounds, but of stone carved straight into the living cliffs. You are standing before Mesa Verde in what is today Colorado. Towering canyon walls enclose you, their faces scarred and pitted by centuries of wind and rain. And tucked within these cliffs, under vast natural overhangs, entire cities cling to the rock face. Multi-storied stone dwellings line the ledges, their walls stacked with skill, their rooms no larger than the reach of a man's arms, their ladders climbing like veins up into hidden chambers. This is the world of the ancestral Puebloans, a people who defied the desert by turning stone itself into shelter. From a distance, these dwellings look like shadows, dark shapes under the cliffs. But step closer, and life reveals itself. Fires flicker in kivas, circular ceremonial chambers dug into the earth, their roofs supported by timber beams.
their entrances through ladders descending like gateways into the underworld. The smell of wood smoke drifts up. You hear the voices of women grinding maize on stone metates, their rhythm steady, patient, eternal. Children laugh as they chase each other across narrow terraces, their bare feet slapping the stone. Men climb ladders with baskets on their backs, filled with squash, beans, or firewood collected from the sparse forests above the canyon.
It is a hard life, but not a bleak one. These cliff dwellers are builders, artists, survivors. Their pottery is painted with black and white designs, spirals, feathers, geometric lines that mirror the balance they see in the world around them. Their homes, carefully plastered and smoothed, rise 3 or 4 stories high, linked with doorways so small you must crouch to enter. A reminder that every bit of heat, every breath of warmth is precious here. Yet the cliffs are not just shelter, they are fortress. Look at the way the dwellings are tucked under overhangs, impossible to attack from above, hidden from sight below. In an age when raiding parties might strike without warning, the cliffs gave protection as much as shade. And in those kivas, when the fires burn low and chants rise in the smoke, the people call upon spirits of earth, sky, and ancestors. They pray for rain most of all, for in this desert, rain is the single gift that decides life or death.
Corn is once again the heart of survival, but here, coaxing it from the soil is an act of faith. Fields lie on mesa tops, fragile patches of green carved into the brown. When the rains come, the crops swell. When the clouds pass by, families tighten their belts, grinding the last of the kernels stored in clay jars. Every drop matters, every drought cuts deeper. Still, life here continues for centuries. Communities grow, spread, connect with distant peoples. From as far away as Mexico, turquoise and parrots are traded northward, their colors dazzling against the desert backdrop. From other pueblos, cotton, shells, and stories travel. The cliff dwellers are not isolated. They are part of a vast web of trade and knowledge stretching across the continent. But just as with Cahokia, time holds a shadow. By the late 1200s, the rains begin to fail more often. The desert grows harsher. Crops wither. The sun burns relentless in cloudless skies. Imagine the silence of a field where corn should grow tall, but instead only brittle stalks crumble to dust. Families grow thinner, their eyes sunken from hunger. Fires burn less often, smoke rising only weakly from the kivas. The Iroquois Confederacy. The desert cliffs fade from view. The air cools. Step now into the thick, endless forests of the Northeast. Vast stretches of oak, maple, and pine, where rivers cut winding paths and the seasons rule with a strong hand. Here the summers are warm, heavy with the scent of green leaves and the buzz of insects. But the winters bite with fierce teeth, burying the land in snow, freezing lakes and streams into silent mirrors. It is here, among these forests and waters, that the Iroquois Confederacy rose, a union of nations bound together by law, ritual, and the vision of peace. You stand in the middle of a clearing. Around you rise longhouses, each stretching the length of a modern street, built from saplings bent into arcs and covered with bark sheets. Inside, families gather around central fires. The air smells of wood smoke, roasted corn, and drying meat. Hammocks sway gently between posts. Baskets of beans and squash hang from the rafters, and laughter rings as children dart between the shadows. Life here is communal, several families tied by clan, by bloodline, by shared survival under one long roof. But it is not just family that rules this world. Look closer. The heart of Iroquois society is the clan mother. Women hold power in ways unseen in much of the medieval world. They own the fields where corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, grow. They decide who leads, for it is they who appoint the chiefs, and they who can strip them of their authority. Their wisdom guides the councils, their voices echo in decisions of war and peace. Imagine a council fire burning bright, warriors speaking boldly, and then the voice of a clan mother rising steady and firm, her word final.
The political vision of the Iroquois is no less extraordinary. 5 nations, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca, once clashed in endless war, their hatreds poisoning the forests with blood. But then came a man known as the Peacemaker, and with him, Hiawatha, his voice as persuasive as thunder rolling through the trees. Together they forged the great law of peace, uniting the nations into a confederacy bound not by conquest, but by agreement. Picture the ceremony, arrows bound together so that no single shaft could be broken, symbolizing unity. The council fire lit at Onondaga, the central flame of their government, where representatives gathered to debate, to argue, to persuade, but always to resolve under law. This system, born in a medieval forest, was far ahead of its time. Decisions required consensus, voices were heard, balance was sought. Even centuries later, when European colonists arrived, they marveled at the sophistication of the Confederacy, some even drawing inspiration from it in shaping their own ideas of governance. But do not mistake peace for weakness. The Iroquois were fierce when roused. Warriors painted their faces in black and red, their movements swift through the trees, their war cry shattering the silence of dawn. Raids struck like lightning, burning villages, capturing enemies, striking fear across vast territories. To be taken by the Iroquois was to be tested by fire, sometimes literally. Captives were adopted into clans, given new names, new families. Others were tortured, their cries echoing into the night as warnings to rivals. War was not only survival, it was ritual, it was identity, it was the balance of power maintained through blood.
Still, between raids, the rhythm of life beat steady. Fields of corn and beans rustled in summer winds. Hunters slipped silently through the snow, bows drawn against deer. Children learned stories of the great turtle who bore the earth on his back, of Sky Woman who fell from above. Around fires, elders told tales that bound the people to their ancestors, to the land, the cycles of the moon. And always, the council fire burned. Picture it. Chiefs seated in a great circle, eagle feathers trembling in the firelight, each voice rising in turn. They speak slowly, deliberately, because words matter, because decisions must bind not only the living, but the unborn, the 7 generations to come. Imagine the weight of that responsibility, the thought that every choice today will ripple forward through centuries. Winter here is long. Snow piles deep against the longhouses. Smoke seeps from every roof. Dark trails against the gray sky. Families huddle together, sharing warmth, stories, food. Hunger gnaws, for stores run low and hunting is hard in frozen forests. Yet the people endure as they always have, bound together by clan, by law, by the vision of unity forged long ago. In the spring, the land thaws, rivers swell, life bursts back. Corn is planted again, songs rise in fields, children splash in streams. The cycle renews, and the Confederacy remains, its council fire still burning, its unity still binding, its story still whispered in the rustling of the trees. Today, the Iroquois, or Haudenosaunee, still live on this land, their traditions alive, that law remembered. The great law of peace continues to inspire, a medieval legacy not of castles or crowns, but of democracy and balance, born in the shadows of ancient forests.
The plains hunters, the forests fall away behind us. The canopy of green gives way to sky so vast it feels as if it might swallow you whole. Welcome to the Great Plains, an ocean not of water but of grass. The wind moves through it like waves, bending stalks of blue stem and buffalo grass until the horizon itself seems alive. Above, hawks circle on rising thermals. Below, the earth shakes, not with storms but with the thunder of hooves. This is the realm of the plains hunters, where survival depends on a single creature, the buffalo. The buffalo, or bison, are everywhere. Herds numbering in the thousands roll across the land like dark clouds. Their backs shimmer in the heat, their breath steams in the cold. Each one is massive, a wall of muscle and horn, weighing more than a small cart. And yet, to the peoples of the plains, these beasts are more than food. They are everything: meat for the pot, hides for shelter, sinew for bowstrings, bones for tools. From birth to death, the buffalo sustains life. Imagine a hunt. The village rises before dawn, the air sharp and cool. Hunters paint their faces, their bodies lean with strength, their eyes focused. Bows are strung, spears sharpened, horses prepared. Or before horses came, legs tightened for the long run. The herd grazes on a distant rise, unaware of the eyes upon it. Then comes the signal, a cry, a wave, the rush of movement. Hunters surge forward, the earth trembles, the herd bolts, dust fills the air, thick and choking, turning the morning into storm. Arrows fly, spears thrust, the cries of men and beasts mingle in chaos. For a moment, it is pure frenzy, life and death bound in a single heartbeat. When the hunt succeeds, the work begins. The carcasses are stripped with speed and precision. Meat is cut into long strips, laid out to dry in the sun, later pounded into pemmican, mixtures of fat, berries, and flesh that can last through the hardest winters. Hides are stretched, scraped, softened until they become the skin of teepees, portable homes that rise in perfect cones, their smoke holes open to the sky. Every part of the animal is used. Horns for cups, bones for needles, sinew for thread. Waste is unthinkable. To waste would be to dishonor the gift of the buffalo, the spirit that gave its life so that humans might live. Life on the plains is not easy. The summers are scorching, the sun relentless, beating down upon endless miles of grass. Water is scarce. The winters are cruel, with blizzards that can bury a camp in white silence, freezing even the breath in your lungs. In both extremes, the people endure, their mobility their greatest strength. Villages rise and fall like the seasons, teepees packed, poles lashed, families moving as the herds move. To stay still is to starve. To follow is to survive. And yet, there is beauty here, a rhythm as vast as the sky itself. At night, the stars blanket the plains in shimmering fire. You can see the Milky Way stretching across the heavens, so bright it casts shadows on the ground. Around campfires, stories are told, of trickster spirits, of heroes who once hunted the first buffalo, of the bond between humans and the animals that sustain them. Drums beat, voices sing, the fire sparks upward into the dark as if trying to join the stars themselves. Rituals give meaning to the hunt. Before the chase, prayers are spoken, smoke offered, songs sung to honor the buffalo. After the kill, ceremonies thank the spirit of the animal. Life here is not only survival, it is respect, balance, recognition that humans are but one part of the great circle. But danger is never far. Raids by rival bands threaten the camp. A sudden storm can scatter the herd. A hunt gone wrong can cost lives, trampling hunters beneath hooves, leaving families to mourn at the edge of the fire. Each day is a gamble. Each season a test. Yet the people endure, their spirit as unbroken as the horizon stretching endlessly before them.
The arrival of the horse changes everything. Before, hunters chased buffalo on foot, running them into traps or off cliffs, exhausting themselves in the chase. But with the horse, swift, strong, tireless, the plains are transformed. Now hunters can ride alongside the herd, loosing arrows at full gallop, their hair streaming in the wind, their voices rising in exultation. The hunt becomes both deadlier and more efficient, binding human and horse into one fluid, unstoppable force. The teepee becomes the perfect companion to this new mobility. Quick to raise, quick to take down, it travels with the people wherever the herds lead. Villages grow, spread, shift like shadows on the land. Children learn to ride before they can walk, their small hands gripping horse manes, their laughter carried by the wind. The plains become a world of motion, of chase, of freedom and danger entwined. Yet, for all their mobility, the people of the plains are not without rootedness. Sacred places dot the landscape. Hills where visions are sought, rivers where offerings are left, stones where the spirits are believed to dwell. Vision quests take young men alone into the wilderness, fasting, praying, waiting for dreams that will guide their lives. Medicine bundles filled with sacred objects are guarded with reverence, their power binding families, clans, and nations. Picture the height of summer, a great gathering. Teepees stretch across the plain in circles, smoke rising from hundreds of fires. Drums thunder, rattles shake, voices chant as the Sundance begins. Men pierce their flesh, fastening themselves to poles, dancing in pain, in sacrifice, in devotion to the powers that sustain the people. Blood flows, dust rises, the sun beats down, and in this act, balance is restored, prayers lifted to the sky.
The arrival of the horse changes everything. Before, hunters chased buffalo on foot, running them into traps or off cliffs, exhausting themselves in the chase. But with the horse, swift, strong, tireless, the plains are transformed. Now hunters can ride alongside the herd, loosing arrows at full gallop, their hair streaming in the wind, their voices rising in exultation. The hunt becomes both deadlier and more efficient, binding human and horse into one fluid, unstoppable force. The teepee becomes the perfect companion to this new mobility, quick to raise,
Quick to take down, it travels with the people wherever the herds lead. Villages grow, spread, shift like shadows on the land. Children learn to ride before they can walk, their small hands gripping horse manes, their laughter carried by the wind. The plains become a world of motion, of chase, of freedom and danger entwined. Yet for all their mobility, the people of the plains are not without rootedness. Sacred places dot the landscape, hills where visions are sought, rivers where offerings are left, stones where the spirits are believed to dwell. Vision quests take young men alone into the wilderness, fasting, praying, waiting for dreams that will guide their lives. Medicine bundles, filled with sacred objects, are guarded with reverence, their power binding families, clans, and nations. Picture the height of summer, a great gathering. Teepees stretch across the plain in circles, smoke rising from hundreds of fires. Drums thunder, rattles shake, voices chant as the sun dance begins. Men pierce their flesh, fastening themselves to poles, dancing in pain, in sacrifice, in devotion to the powers that sustain the people. Blood flows, dust rises, the sun beats down. And in this act, balance is restored, prayers lifted to the sky.
This is the world of the plains hunters, hard, mobile, fierce, yet filled with ceremony, with reverence, with life drawn from the buffalo's gift. A world where freedom stretches as wide as the horizon, and every day is a test of strength, endurance, and spirit. If the thunder of hooves and the life of the plains has carried you away, pause for a moment. Subscribe to Urgent Talks, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Are you riding with us through the stillness of midnight or under the blaze of a midday sun? Your voice keeps these stories running as far as the horizon itself. As dusk fell, the city changed once more. The marketplace began to thin, but the plazas near the great mounds filled with people. Fires were lit in large pits, casting a trembling glow upon the crowd. Shadows danced across faces as priests emerged, their robes painted with the red of ochre and the black of ash. They carried staffs adorned with feathers and bones, symbols of power that spoke of their link between the people and the unseen world. The drums began again, slow at first, steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself, then faster, more insistent, until they seemed to shake the very soil beneath your feet. The crowd swayed, their chants rising in unison, voices carrying upward toward the heavens. From the summit of the largest mound, a sacred fire blazed, sending smoke spiraling into the twilight. To Cahokia's people, this smoke was not just the residue of flame, it was the breath of the gods themselves, rising to meet the stars. These ceremonies were more than ritual, they were survival. The city's size depended upon the careful balance of food, faith, and authority. Priests performed sacrifices, sometimes animals, sometimes offerings of corn and precious shells, and perhaps in the most solemn nights, even human lives. Captives from rival tribes could be led to the altar, their fates sealed in fire and blade, their deaths believed to renew the strength of the community. To Cahokia's citizens, these acts were not cruelty, but necessity. The gods demanded life, and only through such gifts could the people hope to ensure the rising of the sun, the flooding of the river, the fertility of the soil. But even as the flames leapt high, shadows of doubt must have stirred in some hearts. Could such a city, so vast and hungry, endure forever? The forests surrounding Cahokia were being stripped for timber. The fields had to stretch farther every year to feed the swelling population. Waste piled up near the river, and with it came disease. Famine, drought, and internal strife whispered like wolves circling the edge of the firelight. Still, for now, the city thrived. Traders continued to arrive, their canoes creaking against the riverbanks, their bundles heavy with copper, obsidian, feathers, and stories from distant lands. Children continued to chase one another through the lanes, laughing as fireflies flickered in the warm night air. Families gathered around hearths, sharing meals of roasted maize and venison stew, their conversations blending with the endless rhythm of drums from the ceremonial plazas. And above them all, the great mounds loomed, their silent bulk a reminder that Cahokia was not just a city of the living, but a monument to ancestors and gods. The night deepened. Stars pierced the sky, countless and cold, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the fragility of human endeavor. To live in Cahokia was to exist in the center of a world at once vibrant and perilous, glorious and fragile. A place where every sunrise promised new abundance, but also carried the weight of uncertainty. And so, as you picture this medieval American city alive with sound, fire, and faith, ask yourself, if you were standing in Cahokia tonight, among the chants and the drums, would you feel exhilaration or unease? Would you see a civilization at its peak or sense the cracks already forming beneath its foundations? This was the paradox of Cahokia, grand, mysterious, powerful, yet doomed to fade. Its people had built monuments that rivaled the pyramids of Egypt in scale. Yet in time, even these would be swallowed by earth and silence. Soon we will follow that silence, tracing the decline that turned a metropolis into myth. But before we step into collapse, linger here just a little longer, in the glow of fire and drum, at the height of a forgotten American empire. Cahokia's decline, night sky. As the 13th century waned, Cahokia faced challenges no city could ignore. The fields that once yielded abundant maize began to falter under changing rains. Drought struck, leaving soil cracked and hungry for water. Rivers that carried traders' canoes slowed with low tides, stranding goods and isolating villages. Hunger whispered in the plazas, mixing with the drum beats and chants, a silent, insistent reminder that even the mightiest city could falter. The people of Cahokia, trained from birth to honor tradition, ritual, and authority, felt the strain. Chiefs convened in councils atop the mounds, seeking guidance from priests, reading the patterns of the stars, and consulting the sacred fires. Still, no smoke, no vision, no sacrifice could fully shield them from the consequences of a fragile ecosystem. Violence, once rare, began to appear more frequently. Mass graves hint at sacrifices, perhaps offered in desperation, perhaps demanded by those clinging to power. Families faced starvation. Neighbor turned a wary eye to neighbor. The very city that had seemed eternal was trembling under the weight of nature and human ambition alike. Trade networks strained. Copper from distant lakes arrived late, shells from the Gulf Coast dwindled, and distant allies could no longer rely on Cahokia's power to maintain order. The city, which had been the hub of an intricate continent-wide web, began to feel isolated. Without the steady rhythm of goods, ceremony, and tribute, the social bonds holding this metropolis together began to fray.
And yet, life persisted. Children still played near the plazas, unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon. Merchants still counted shells with careful eyes. Families still gathered around hearths, whispering prayers to the gods, hoping for rains that might never come. The mounds, silent and enormous, bore witness to this tension, a city caught between past glory and impending silence. By the early 13th century, the first signs of abandonment were visible. Houses on the outskirts were left unattended, fields lay fallow, fires burned low. The great mounds, once bustling with priests and councils, stood as mute reminders of what had been. In time, even Monk's Mound, towering over the Mississippi floodplain, would be slowly reclaimed by grass, wind, and rain. Yet even in decline, Cahokia's story remains magnificent. It was a city of remarkable vision, where humans working together moved mountains of earth, orchestrated trade across hundreds of miles, and aligned their lives with the heavens. Its fall does not diminish its brilliance. It underscores the fragility of all human endeavor. Standing in the ruins today, one can almost hear the echoes, the drum beats of the plaza, the chants of priests, the laughter of children, and the anxious whispers of a city sensing its own fragility. Cahokia teaches us that even civilizations unmatched in ambition are subject to the rhythms of nature, the fragility of resources, and the limits of human endurance. As we leave Cahokia behind, we step westward into the deserts and canyons of the Southwest, where another medieval American civilization thrived, one carved not from earth, but from sheer sandstone cliffs. Here, survival demanded ingenuity of a different kind, and the stakes were just as high.
Pueblo cliff dwellers, Mesa Verde and beyond. Imagine walking through the canyons of the Southwest in the 12th century. The sun beats down relentlessly, casting sharp shadows across red sandstone cliffs. Yet tucked high into these cliffs are astonishing cities carved into rock, clinging to sheer faces as if suspended between earth and sky. These are the homes of the ancestral Puebloans, a medieval civilization as sophisticated and disciplined as any in Europe. The cliff cities of Mesa Verde rise from ledges hundreds of feet above canyon floors.
Multi-storied stone dwellings are interconnected by wooden beams, ladders, and narrow passageways. Each room, each wall, each window was placed with intention, not only for survival, but for artistry, spirituality, and social order. Below some dwellings lie kivas, circular ceremonial chambers dug into the earth, portals to the underworld, sacred spaces where rituals connected the living to ancestors and gods. Life here was far from easy. Water was scarce and precious. Every drop had to be carried from distant springs or collected from rain. Fields carved from the arid soil demanded meticulous care. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters of agriculture, were coaxed from the soil through relentless attention, prayer, and knowledge passed through generations. Failure meant hunger. Success meant sustenance and survival for entire communities. Yet in hardship, beauty flourished. Walls are adorned with patterns and painted symbols, pottery crafted with intricate designs, and the careful alignment of dwellings with the sun and stars revealed a deep understanding of the natural world. Life and art were inseparable. Survival required both skill and vision.
Drought struck with merciless regularity. Storage pits filled with grain became lifelines. Water jars were hoarded, rationed, and carefully managed. Villages fortified their homes, not against invaders alone, but against the caprices of nature itself. Archaeologists today find evidence of fires and scars on skeletons, perhaps from conflict, perhaps from desperation. The pressures of survival sometimes turned neighbor against neighbor, illustrating the human struggle and ingenuity often coexist with tension and violence. Trade, as in Cahokia, was essential. Turquoise from the desert, obsidian from volcanic mountains, shells from the Gulf Coast, these items traveled long distances, moving through networks that connected the Puebloans with distant tribes. Power, influence, and survival were intertwined with these exchanges. Without trade, drought or failure could prove fatal. Every grain, every stone, every object carried meaning far beyond its immediate use. Night in the cliff dwellings held a different kind of life. Firelight flickered in small rooms, shadows dancing across stone walls. Families gathered in quiet conversation, elders recited stories of ancestors, and children listened with rapt attention. In the kivas, ceremonial fires burned as the community honored ancestors, the earth, and the sky. Ritual and survival were inseparable. Every ceremony was not merely spiritual, it was a reinforcement of community bonds, a signal to the unseen forces governing life in the harsh desert. The ladders connecting dwellings, the beams spanning narrow gaps, the careful planning of water and food all demanded cooperation. Each person had a role. Some tended crops, others hunted small game, some carved stone for walls, and others maintained sacred spaces. Every action mattered. The collapse of any part could endanger all.
Trade was more than commerce, it was the lifeblood of society. A delayed shipment of copper could disrupt a leader's authority in Cahokia. A failed exchange of turquoise could hinder Puebloan ceremonies. Trade connected communities, reinforced hierarchies, and created dependencies. It shaped politics, social cohesion, and survival. Disruption could ripple across hundreds of miles, turning prosperity into scarcity almost overnight. This interconnection also fostered cultural exchange. Ideas about architecture, spiritual practice, and governance traveled alongside goods. The alignment of Cahokia's mounds with celestial events echoed in smaller settlements across the continent. Symbolic patterns in Puebloan pottery resembled motifs traced back to distant regions. Even distant hunter-gatherer groups borrowed techniques and strategies from trading neighbors. Knowledge, like goods, was carried from hand to hand, tribe to tribe, and river to river. The Great Plains were the arteries connecting these civilizations. Nomadic hunters roaming with the bison herds acted as messengers, traders, and conduits of information. They carried shells, copper, and obsidian, linking forests, deserts, and tundra. Every hunt was both survival and diplomacy. Success meant not only feeding a village, but also sustaining trade networks. Failure could reverberate far beyond one hunting party, affecting distant communities reliant on these resources. Meanwhile, northern societies, including Inuit communities, adapted to extremes of cold, ice, and seasonal scarcity. They were masters of survival, navigating frozen seas and tundra, reading winds, ice, and stars with precision. While isolated geographically, they participated in these networks indirectly, sending furs, ivory, and crafted tools southward in exchange for other goods, creating a subtle but vital link in continental exchange. Despite these networks, life remained fragile. Drought, famine, disease, and conflict could disrupt even the most resilient societies. A failed harvest in the southwest could ripple into Cahokia, triggering scarcity in dependent communities. A broken alliance on the plains could isolate villages, leaving hunters without trade goods. Survival required constant awareness, adaptability, and diplomacy. Civilization was not static, it was a delicate dance with the environment and neighboring societies.
The brilliance of medieval America lay in its complexity. Without centralized monarchies, written laws, or steel fortresses, these civilizations maintained fast, interconnected networks, balancing ritual, trade, survival, and social cohesion. Power was fluid, earned through cooperation, influence, and knowledge of the land. Authority was measured not by banners or crowns, but by the ability to sustain people, goods, and traditions across vast landscapes. Yet shadows persisted. Cahokia's mounds still hid evidence of sacrifices. Pueblo and cliff cities faced drought and eventual abandonment. Northern communities confronted deadly winters and unpredictable ice. Across the continent, survival was never guaranteed. Human ingenuity met with the harshest realities at every turn.
As Europeans began crossing the Atlantic centuries later, they failed to recognize the sophistication of these networks. Rivers were wilderness, mounds were hills, cliff dwellings were ruins. Trade routes and alliances were dismissed as primitive paths. The fragile brilliance of continental civilization was erased in a matter of decades, leaving only fragments, whispers, and archaeological traces.
Yet today, those fragments allow us to glimpse a continent alive with civilization, strategy, and survival. By tracing the flow of copper, shells, turquoise, and obsidian, we see how societies were bound together in a living web of human ingenuity. By studying ceremonial sites, dwellings, and council grounds, we understand how ritual governance and trade maintained cohesion. These were civilizations of remarkable vision, endurance, and adaptability. Standing in imagination at Cahokia, then climbing the cliffs of Mesa Verde, then running alongside hunters across the plains, and finally feeling the icy Arctic wind with Inuit communities, one realizes the vastness of medieval America. It was a continent of interlinked survival, of thriving cities, ceremonial landscapes, nomadic ingenuity, and delicate balances maintained over centuries. Daily life in the Northeast was tightly interwoven with this political structure. Villages were organized with care. Longhouses stretched in orderly rows, hearths provided warmth and sustenance, and agricultural fields, corn, beans, and squash, fed communities through harsh winters. Hunting, fishing, and gathering complemented farming, ensuring that every person contributed to the survival and prosperity of the group. Yet life here was not without danger. Winters were brutal. Rivers froze, food became scarce, and sickness could spread quickly. Hunters risked frostbite and wild animals, while farmers labored under the summer sun to store enough food for months of isolation. Conflict, whether internal or with neighboring groups, was a constant concern. The Great Law of Peace was designed to mitigate such threats, emphasizing diplomacy, alliances, and shared responsibility. Trade networks connected these northeastern communities with distant civilizations. Copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, and other precious materials moved along established paths. Goods were not merely commodities, they were symbols of trust, alliances, and respect. Trade reinforced political structures, linking communities economically and socially across hundreds of miles.
The sophistication of the Iroquois Confederacy is astonishing when considered in comparison to contemporary European systems. While Europe relied on written law, armies, and feudal hierarchies, the Iroquois maintained order through oral tradition, consensus, and communal responsibility. Diplomacy was continuous, negotiation was constant. Survival demanded wisdom as much as strength, foresight as much as courage. Rituals and ceremonies played a crucial role. Seasonal festivals celebrated the harvest, honored the spirits, and reinforced social bonds. Leaders, warriors, and families participated in rites that reminded everyone of their obligations to the land, their ancestors, and each other. Even the smallest gesture, the passing of a wampum belt, the sharing of food, the lighting of a ceremonial fire, reinforced the structure of society. Through this lens, the Northeast emerges not as a wilderness, but as a sophisticated, interdependent civilization. Its councils, alliances, and ceremonies created stability in a world governed by seasons, nature, and human ambition. It was a society that understood the delicate balance between authority and freedom, survival and diplomacy. Imagine yourself walking through a longhouse village, listening to elders recount the Great Law of Peace, feeling the rhythm of daily life tied to the seasons and trade. Could you have navigated these councils, respected traditions, and survived in a society that demanded wisdom, cooperation, and vigilance? Could you have hunted, farmed, and honored obligations while understanding the delicate diplomacy that maintained peace across nations? Even here, shadows existed. Harsh winters could kill crops, intertribal conflicts could erupt, disease could spread unnoticed. Success required skill, patience, and foresight. Civilization was not guaranteed. It was earned daily through cooperation, respect, and resilience.
And when Europeans arrived centuries later, they largely failed to comprehend this political sophistication. Oral traditions were dismissed as myths. Councils and laws, carefully maintained for generations, were seen as informal or primitive. Yet the legacy endures. The Great Law of Peace influenced not only local governance, but centuries later, even some aspects of modern democratic thought. Standing in imagination among the towering pines and council fires, witnessing the deliberation of leaders, the cooperation of families, and the intricate network of trade, one sees the full breadth of medieval America's ingenuity. From Cahokia to Mesa Verde, from the plains to the Arctic, and now the Northeast, a continent alive with civilization, survival, and wisdom comes into view.
Could you have survived here? Could you have honored tradition, contributed to trade, endured harsh winters, and navigated political complexities? Could you have balanced personal survival with communal responsibility in a society that demanded both? Medieval America was not a monolith. It was a mosaic of civilizations, each adapted to its environment, each flourishing through ingenuity, resilience, and cooperation. And now, as we uncover its stories, we step into a world nearly erased, yet vividly alive through imagination, archaeology, and tradition. Great Plains and Arctic survival. Now, turn your gaze westward, across rolling prairies that stretch endlessly toward the horizon. Here lie the Great Plains, a land both beautiful and unforgiving. Long before the arrival of horses, nomadic hunters roamed this vast expanse, following the massive herds of bison that were the lifeblood of their communities. Every hunt was a test of endurance, strategy, and courage. One misstep could mean starvation. One miscalculation could cost lives. Imagine the rhythm of the hunt. Hunters move silently across the tall grass, eyes fixed on the herd, feet barely making a sound against the earth. Spears are poised, and communal strategy ensures that bison are driven into carefully prepared traps or guided over cliffs. The success of one hunt sustains entire villages, providing meat for food, hides for clothing, bones for tools, and sinews for crafting bows and shelters. The plains demanded both physical strength and sharp intellect. Hunters needed to understand the behavior of the herd, the patterns of the seasons, and the signs of weather. The land dictated their movements. Communities had to anticipate droughts, wildfires, and the changing paths of the bison. Survival was never guaranteed. It was earned through skill, foresight, and relentless perseverance. Even the youngest members of society contributed. Children learned tracking, observation, and the signs of the land from an early age. Elders passed down knowledge of the cycles of nature, of survival tactics, and of stories that encoded lessons critical to life on the plains. Every individual had a role, and every role was essential. Yet, despite the challenges, life on the Great Plains had its rhythm and beauty. The wind rippled through endless fields of grass, sunrises painted the sky in fire and gold, and the movements of bison created a pulse, a heartbeat of the land itself. Communities thrived by adapting, cooperating, and respecting the delicate balance between human ambition and the forces of nature. Great Plains and Arctic survival. Now, turn your gaze westward, across rolling prairies that stretch endlessly toward the horizon. Here lie the Great Plains, a land both beautiful and unforgiving. Long before the arrival of horses, nomadic hunters roamed this vast expanse, following the massive herds of bison that were the lifeblood of their communities. Every hunt was a test of endurance, strategy, and courage. One misstep could mean starvation. One miscalculation could cost lives. Imagine the rhythm of the hunt. Hunters move silently across the tall grass, eyes fixed on the herd, feet barely making a sound against the earth. Spears are poised, and communal strategy ensures that bison are driven into carefully prepared traps or guided over cliffs. The success of one hunt sustains entire villages, providing meat for food, hides for clothing, bones for tools, and sinews for crafting bows and shelters. The plains demanded both physical strength and sharp intellect. Hunters needed to understand the behavior of the herd, the patterns of the seasons, and the signs of weather. The land dictated their movements. Communities had to anticipate droughts, wildfires, and the changing paths of the bison. Survival was never guaranteed. It was earned through skill, foresight, and relentless perseverance. Even the youngest members of society contributed. Children learned tracking, observation, and the signs of the land from an early age. Elders passed down knowledge of the cycles of nature, of survival tactics, and of stories that encoded lessons critical to life on the plains. Every individual had a role, and every role was essential. Yet, despite the challenges, life on the Great Plains had its rhythm and beauty. The wind rippled through endless fields of grass, sunrises painted the sky in fire and gold, and the movements of bison created a pulse, a heartbeat of the land itself. Communities thrived by adapting, cooperating, and respecting the delicate balance between human ambition and the forces of nature. Farther north, across frozen tundras and icy seas, the ancestors of the Inuit carved existence from a land of snow, ice, and relentless cold. Here, life demanded mastery of the environment. Igloos, expertly packed from snow, offered insulation against Arctic nights.
Tools crafted from bone, stone, and driftwood allowed hunters to pursue seals, whales, and caribou. The Arctic was unforgiving. One misjudged wind, a crack in the ice, or a poorly timed hunt could mean death. Survival depended on intimate knowledge passed down through generations. Hunters read the stars, the currents, the ice formations, and animal behavior with precision. Communities shared knowledge openly, knowing that cooperation could mean the difference between life and death. Imagine standing on a frozen shore, watching hunters glide across ice in kayaks, harpoons in hand. Every movement is calculated, every breath measured. The Arctic world is silent, but alive with danger and rhythm. It is a place where human ingenuity is not a luxury, it is survival itself. Trade and communication connected even these northern communities to the broader networks of medieval America. While the Arctic might seem isolated, goods like furs, tools, and knowledge traveled south along established routes. Stories, traditions, and survival strategies flowed alongside physical trade, creating a web of human ingenuity spanning the continent. In both the plains and the Arctic, the human truths remain consistent. Hunger, skill, courage, and cooperation determine survival. Every community is bound to its environment. Every success and failure echoes across generations. Life is fragile, yet ingenuity endures. And then came the Europeans. Across plains and tundras, the arrival of foreign powers brought disease, conflict, and disruption. Nomadic patterns were broken, hunting grounds altered, and centuries of accumulated wisdom threatened with erasure. Yet even here, traces remain. Archaeological sites, oral traditions, and continuing cultural practices preserve a living memory of a medieval America that was complex, adaptive, and deeply human. Imagine yourself on the plains, running alongside hunters, feeling the ground vibrate with the bison herd. Imagine standing beside Inuit hunters, listening to the cracking of ice, feeling the Arctic wind biting at your face, learning the delicate balance between life and environment. Could you have survived here? Could you have endured the constant challenge, adapted to relentless conditions, and thrived? The Great Plains and Arctic regions demonstrate the resilience of human civilization across extreme landscapes. Here, life is measured in knowledge, skill, and courage. Communities are interconnected, strategies honed through generations, and survival is the highest form of achievement.
Through these lands, the mosaic of medieval America is complete, from Cahokia's plazas to Mesa Verde's cliff dwellings, from the forests of the Northeast to the endless Great Plains and the frozen Arctic. A continent thrives in imagination, history, and enduring legacy. Could you have survived? Could you have respected the land, honored its creatures, and adapted to its extremes? This is the challenge medieval America presents, a test of endurance, insight, and courage, against environments that shape and demand the best of human potential. As we step back from the plains, the Arctic, the cliffs, and the mounds, take a moment to reflect on what you've just witnessed. Medieval America was not a forgotten wilderness. It was alive with civilization, ingenuity, ritual, and survival. Cities rose without stone castles, governance thrived without kings, and trade networks spanned hundreds of miles without written contracts. Every mound, every cliff dwelling, every bison-driven hunt, every carefully constructed igloo tells a story of human resilience and creativity. Imagine walking through Cahokia's plazas as drums echo beneath the sun. Imagine climbing ladders carved into sandstone cliffs at Mesa Verde, carrying water and grain to sustain your people. Imagine running alongside hunters across the endless Great Plains, guiding massive herds, or navigating frozen Arctic seas with Inuit hunters, every movement a matter of life or death. Could you have survived this medieval world? Could you have thrived where endurance, intelligence, and courage determined your fate?
And yet, the story of medieval America is not just about survival, it's about legacy. The centuries of conquest, disease, and erasure tried to silence these civilizations. Fragments endure. Mounds, ruins, pottery, tools, and oral traditions whisper their stories to those who are willing to listen. Their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability are a testament to the enduring human spirit. Now, as you reflect on this forgotten world, take a moment to connect with us. Take out your phone or keyboard and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button if this journey through medieval America inspired or surprised you, and we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to mention the exact time you're watching this video. Is it morning, afternoon, or late at night in your corner of the world? Sharing your time and place helps us connect with viewers across the globe and creates a community that appreciates history together. As you hit that subscribe button, imagine being part of a community that uncovers lost chapters of history. Imagine helping stories once buried under centuries of soil, snow, and silence reach the world once more. Every view, every like, every comment brings medieval America back to life, honoring the people who built, hunted, governed, and survived on this land long before maps marked it.
Before you leave, remember this. Medieval America was not empty. It was complex, dangerous, beautiful, and breathtaking. Its people endured, thrived, and left a legacy that challenges the way we think about history. And now, through your imagination and curiosity, that legacy lives again. So take a moment, subscribe, like, and comment. Tell us your time and place. Join us in remembering a world that refuses to be forgotten. Because when we listen to the whispers of the past, when we walk in the footsteps of those who came before, we honor not just history, but the human spirit itself. Thank you for watching. And as you go forward, remember, civilization is built by the hands of many, survived by the courage of some, and remembered by those who choose to listen.